So I talked previously a little bit about the 6 unit, why I liked it, how I sourced the deal, sort of what the business plan was going forward. So just a little update as to where we are now. I have 2 units that were empty. One, after I took over the property, one tenant moved out immediately. I think they were always looking to move out. The reason I say that is when we did inspection, I was speaking to them and they told me that in the next few months that they were planning to buy their own place. So I assume they took that opportunity to move out and not have to deal with any issues about moving out and breaking leases or anything. The other unit that is now vacant was, they had a tenant in there. This is quite an interesting story actually. So I think I'll share that with you guys. Is that when I went to do the inspection, there was a handyman that did all the work for the previous landlord. And I think I've talked about this, that the landlord didn't take the best, the previous owner, the landlord didn't take the best care of this property, unfortunately. And some of the units were pretty rough, to be honest with you. I was surprised that a landlord would let people kind of live like that. There was quite a bit of water damage and whatnot. But this guy was his handyman. He did all the work on the property and kind of managed it for him, so he collected rents. So he was a great guy when we met him. He was super friendly, showed us around, and yeah, gave us some inside information on the property. So I thought he was a good resource going forward. I was going to keep in touch with him, and any issues that might arise, I was going to ask him about it. Well, fast forward, after we took the property over, this guy, his name was Joe, decided that he was going to move in with his girlfriend, or his girlfriend lived there at the time. So move in with her. They weren't going to pay any rent. And if anyone tried to go in there, he threatened that he was going to let his Rottweiler attack them. So that was a lovely gentleman that he was. But that was quite interesting, So these are the kind of things that you have to be prepared for when you take over a property, and when you own residential rental properties. These issues will arise. I didn't get mad or frustrated at all. It's just what you have to expect. What I always tell myself is that, would I rather these problems, or would I rather not own any properties? And of course, it always comes down to that. I would much rather own these properties and have these problems than not own these properties. So that was quite interesting. So these 2 units were empty at the same time. So obviously those 2 units are not producing any rent for me. But all the units needed to be renovated anyway. So I would have to go through one-on-one. So it just meant that I could do 2 at a time. So they are due to be finished in the next week or so, and we'll get ready to rent them. The good news is, I think in the previous video I talked about the rent bumps and how much I think I could get. Well, we think we can get a little bit more. We're hoping to get $1,200 to $1,250 for these 2 beds. These 2 empty units are the 2 beds, so we're hoping to get $1,250 for these units. And yeah, that would be great. The only issue is we are kind of coming out of the pandemic now, the COVID-19 pandemic, but it's hard to judge people's actions right now. Are people comfortable moving? Do they have no choice but to move? So we'll see. And is there less competition for these units, which would mean that we might not be able to push rents as much as we can. So we'll see. I'll give you guys an update as we get closer to listing. And we still have the backsplash still needs to be finished, and I think hardware on the cabinets. We're also going to spruce up the front of the building, just so that it has that curb appeal, and when people come to the property, they have a bit of a wow factor. So that'll help leasing, and hopefully encourage people to be willing to part with their money for $1,250 1,300 perhaps, on, you know, if we're lucky. The issue as well being in this area as well is that rent comps aren't easy. So to find out how much the rent is for the area, there's not that many properties that are comparable to mine, and that there's not that many properties for rent, to be honest with you, in a half a mile radius. You know, you start going much further, you kind of get into Cincinnati, downtown Cincinnati, and that's not comparable at all. So it's challenging to try and find the right rent. We're going to just push it a little bit, I think, to start off with, as I was speaking to the property manager, and see where we go. And if there's no bites, obviously we'll have to bring it down a bit. But you know, it'll be interesting to see. We're going to put one on the market first. If we feel like if we put both, that's just going to create more competition for the units. So it's better to have one rented, and hopefully we can get that rented for a good amount, and that can be our rent comp then. So we'll see. My units are going to be nice. They're going to have granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, washer dryers, and nice thing is they have AC as well. So you know, it's not window AC. So all of these things bode well for the unit and for the property and for my investment. But again, we'll have to wait and see what happens.